Okay, cool. And so, but go back to when you were talking about that lady, though, because I want to understand the one who had the issue. What do you think her issue was?
Who the leader?
Both. So the lady who had the problem that you told her to go to the altar.
Okay, I think she had a legion of demons. That's what dropped in my spirit. I think she had a legion of demons. I think she may have been on drugs, and she was just manifesting like during the service, and she manifested at the altar. I think that she wanted God. I believe that there is clearly some seeds there. I just think because one thing that stood out, she said something happened to her on the floor of a church. So she may have been triggered when I was like, okay, I feel like I want you to kneel at the altar. And so even though she was triggered in that moment, that doesn't still mean that God didn't want her to still, surrender in that moment and to do that in that moment. But I think the enemy maybe had just a hold on her because of what she possibly experienced on the floor, and that kept her from being able to move forward in the moment. But
so how those people there? So people said they've been trying to help her for so long, but what were they doing to help her?
I don't know exactly. They just said all I know is the one woman who was like, "This is your time. This is your time." She was just like she had been working with her, and trying to help her. And she said that the lady had been back and forth to the church. But I feel like they just maybe didn't have the right spirit, because once it was all said and done and everybody was standing around talking, they were like, "Oh yeah, that was Jezebel." And it was just so dismissive. But she's still a person, and I felt like that was shown how their disposition, like, towards what just happened to me, showed their heart towards her. It showed their
like religiousness, like they're so religious, but they don't have that compassion that God wants us to have.
Yes. Even the fact of when it was surprising that no one understood, like, when after I talked to the lady and I went and knelt at the altar, that I was, praying for her. Like, and I guess they thought it was weak. I don't know. I don't want to assume, but it felt like maybe they thought it was weird. Like, one lady was like, "Is she supposed to do that? It's okay for her to do that?" And I was like, listening to her ask this other woman, "Was it okay for me to kneel at the altar and pray for this woman?" That's weird to me. And the and the woman was like, "Yeah, that's called intercession. That's what intercession is." And so it was an eye opener. It was disappointing. It was very disappointing, but yeah. So now the issue with the woman in leadership, when I went to her about the ideas and like everything that God was showing me, I think her issue was she didn't want to look bad. I think that she didn't want to come across as not doing something that she was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But isn't necessarily the case. For all she knows,
she just jumped to that conclusion because you came up with something that she should be doing, but she wasn't doing, and she felt guilty.
Yes, that's a possibility. Or she could have looked at it as, this is just a missing piece to add on to what I've been doing. Like, I think it's just all about like her perspective. I think that she maybe felt a little intimidated.
Yeah.
And I think that the words, she was saying stuff like, "I hope you can trust me. You can always come to me." But her words didn't match her heart towards me in the situation. And that really hurt me. Yeah. It was really disappointing. So like I said, I visited the church about 2 more times. And I just was like, okay, Lord. Now, also, I do remember sometime last year that I felt like I was saying I was going to start going to this other church. And back then, everything was fine. So I remembered that. And I was like, okay, maybe this is time. And then just so happened, a homegirl of mine had reached out to me and she invited me to her Celebrate Recovery program at her church. And this was the same church that last year God was telling me I was going to start going to. So I started going to Celebrate Recovery, and it was, girl, it was right on time because I was just holding everything in because I felt like I couldn't talk to nobody. And oh, girl, oh my gosh, I got so much to tell you. Okay, I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody, and so I'll never forget like that first session, that first meeting. I walked in, I sat down, and all of a sudden, I just felt all my emotions bubbling up, and I just like cried for the rest of the day. And I was finally able to get it out, and I finally had a place to talk. So not only am I dealing with my own stuff in Celebrate Recovery and my own, decisions, past stuff, all the things, but it was a chance for me to get out the stuff that had just happened. And the root of all of that and all of what I was feeling was rejection. I felt rejected and I felt anger and I even had some abandonment, feelings of abandonment. And so I was able to pinpoint that that's what I was experiencing. And also, just a side note, so in the midst of this Celebrate Recovery, in my meeting, going to my meetings, working with my sponsor had me send her pictures of me over the years. And I was able to admit to something because one of the principles of Celebrate Recovery is coming out of denial. And I was able to admit to something, and that was, at one point there was a really strong spirit of witchcraft on me. Like I wasn't like intentionally practicing witchcraft, but it was there. And so I was able to acknowledge it because I sent her some pictures from back in like 2016, I think. And this is when I was living in Birmingham. And then I also had told her the story about when I was living in Birmingham at that time. I had just turned 21. I had just aged out of foster care. My mental health, that's when I first started having a lot of mental health problems, like depression and anxiety. And so I went to this counselor, and the counselor was someone that I was recommended to by my job. And so I walk into this woman's office. I remember what it looked like. It was blue and it seemed peaceful, but it also seemed weird. Like I just remember it was like a weird peace. And so I start seeing this woman, and I think maybe by like the third session, towards the end of the session, she pulled out something called angel cards, and she asked me, she was like, I want you to draw 3 cards, and these are going to be your guardian angels. They're going to protect you. And so I did it just naively, but after I did it, I immediately felt like I had did something wrong, but I wasn't sure, because I was like, well, it seemed like she's trying to help me. This is good. These are angels, but I didn't feel right. And so I remember reaching out to somebody about it, and she was like, yeah, Judy, I don't know about that. I don't think you should go back to that woman. So I never went back to her. Well, fast forward to now, that I do have more understanding about, spiritual things. Like those were tarot cards.
Oh wow.
Those were tarot cards. It was witchcraft. And so the enemy, I was a willing participant, but I was naive, and I didn't know what I was really participating in. Also, during that time, I know that I had went through a lot of hurt with my biological family. And so I remember feeling these feelings of, I don't want anything to do with Christians, because my family were Christians and look how they treated me and my brothers. you know. So I already had like this rebellious thing going on with inside of me. I was still claiming to be a Christian, but I was really denying. I felt I was denying Christ. I was denying Christ, and I was leaning more towards spirituality and Afrocentricity. And so I had that going on when I met that lady. And then also, like recently, I felt like the Lord was showing me that because of my bloodline, there was already witchcraft on my bloodline, possibly from my mother's side. So that coupled with the trauma with my family, coupled with the that woman introduced me to those cars, that it was just like she just basically sealed the deal. You know, and so I went all that time, you know, really I had forgot about some of that stuff. I didn't start remembering a lot of this stuff until last year. And I remember I did go through a deliverance session, and during that session, you know, the one of the people prayed about witchcraft, and I was just like, I'm not that, I'm not a witch, but I was. Like I was. That's the reality. So I had to admit that. And it's just now till, you know, with going through the Celebrate Recovery program, looking back at those pictures, that I'm able to admit at one point that's what was going on with me. Whether or not it was willingly, whether or not it was my fault, that's what I had going on. And so that was a really big for me. And I'm glad that God opened my eyes and helped me to see, and helped me to remember, because I had forgot. Like, and, you know, I guess that's why it's important that we, you know, we're just before God and in His presence, and follow, you just going to Him about things, because I had forgot. So that was really major. Oh, okay. So yeah, I moved. I had to move out because the girl, her dogs were peeing and pooping on my stuff, and the dogs was barking on me at me every time I walked through the house. They were barking at me. I didn't have any peace, and the woman, you know, she would make it seem like something was wrong with me, or like something, like I did something to her dogs when I didn't. Mm-hmm. And so they were just these little jabs, you know. And I remember one time she even attacked my face because, you know, in the midst of my transition from my old job to the new job to this new living situation, I was struggling. I was like, God, like, what happened? You know, because I had a decision to leave that job. I was given the ultimatum to leave that job, and I made the decision to stay. And then I still got let go, or pushed out the door, I should say. So I was confused. And then my living situation isn't looking right. So now I'm angry. I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, oh my God, God is forsaking me. You know, I'm going to the extreme. And I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I ain't know what to do with myself. And so she saw two parts of me. She saw the fact that, like, okay, yes, I'm a professing believer. I talk about God. I go to church, and I'm encouraging her. But she's also seeing me feel like it's the end of the world and all this stuff. And so she was like, "You call yourself?" She made a statement of how I called myself a Christian one day, and it hurt my feelings. It did. And I mean, the reality of it is that's what happens when, you know, people who, you know, are on the outside looking in see us, and they see two sides of us, and they don't understand, or, you know, they don't have the maturity to understand what's going on. But yeah, that was that. And also, when she said that, I kind of realized she wasn't my friend, because when I moved in there, I was thinking we were cool. I was thinking we were friends. But after a while, I was like, she's not my friend. This is more so a business transaction for her, and a chance for her to make extra money. And so once I realized that, I kind of was able to set like the appropriate boundaries too, because I think she was expecting me to like drive her around and stuff, which I don't mind doing that stuff some of the times, but, you know, I still have my own life. And like those were her expectations of me.
Yeah.
That's not what I signed up for. And I think she thought she was gonna get a free dog sitter, a free babysitter, and all this other type of stuff. And then slowly, as she was seeing too that I wasn't going for that, I think that began to upset her. So she would pick and do little petty stuff.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
Yeah, looking back on it, I probably failed some. No, I didn't probably. I did. I failed a few tests because even though, she had her stuff going on. I know I was supposed to still show her the love of Christ. Like, I was not supposed to be matching her energy. I was supposed to be, being bigger than that. And because how else is she supposed to see Christ? So I did acknowledge that. I did repent. I did ask for forgiveness, and there was a few times I even asked her for forgiveness. But yeah, it's behind me now. So
yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah, when I left the house, I made sure I cleaned it, my room, the bathroom. I left everything in better shape than it was when I moved in there. So I think I'm proud of myself, for that part, the ending part. And so, yeah.
So how's it going now that all this is behind you?
So now I'm still in limbo. I'm waiting for my next move, which is to be moving into a home as a property manager. I'm excited. I feel like it's God's provision for me. I have been fighting feelings of feeling like I'm relying on someone else and as somebody else's mercy. People have kind of said little things, but I have to look at it from a spiritual point of view, which is no, God is providing for me. You cannot be living in a whole house for $200, and all I'm being asked to do is upkeep the rooms when the guests leave. So, and then in the meantime, with me being back in the house with my family, it's a little uncomfortable, but I'm trying to just press in. They're encouraging me to come up with a plan and to do different things so that I'm moving forward. And then too, so that I'm not in this situation again. Because that's another thing. God is providing for me, but I also have to take into accountability how I got here. So I got to do things different. I am going to do things different this time. Because I don't want to be in this situation again. And one thing that my Celebrate Recovery, the pastor over our Celebrate Recovery meeting, he was saying sometimes you have to suffer. He was like, because if you don't suffer, you're not going to learn. And so I feel like I'm definitely suffering. It's not a horrible suffering, but it's suffering in the fact of it's uncomfortable, and I'm having to face myself, and I'm having to face the shame. My people aren't shaming me, but I feel a little bit of shame of being 33 and having to move back in because of my decisions and stuff like that. And so I'm just facing it. I'm not trying to maneuver out of it early. I'm not trying to I'm not asking for pity or anything like that. I just have to face it head on. And then I'm going to God about it. And I'm asking him, okay, Lord, well, what do I do now? So I'm definitely inviting him into my process. I'm staying connected with my community. Unfortunately, I'm a little farther away than I was when I first started going. I'm in Decatur now. So I moved from Huntsville to Decatur, and that sucks. But yeah, I'm still, staying connected by phone and stuff like that. And then I'm going to be there, like, physically when I can.
And God's going to work it out. Just keep him in the process. Like, keep him in your life altogether,
Yeah. I will. I also got back on my medication because that was another thing. I was a little embarrassed to admit, like, okay, maybe it wasn't God that told me to start taking my medicine. Maybe that was me. And so I was trying to, like, stick it out, but I need it,
What type of medication?
Sertraline and Triliptal. So, and those just help, balance my thoughts, my mind, my mood, and stuff like that. Because I was thinking, okay, I'm in my word, I'm doing all these things, so I'm not going to need it. And sometimes that's the case for some people. Like, I'm not saying that doesn't work for some, but for me, in my situation, I need it for now. I may need it forever. I don't know. But I just know I got to do what I have to do for right now to remain stable and to be able to do the things I need to do.
Yeah. I'm gonna be praying for you because we don't need medication. All we need is God. So, yeah. But I understand that some people do take it for certain things, but I just don't think we have to depend on that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with you. And then there's an and. Yeah. And so I guess like the and is, we depend on God, and if we got to take it.
Yeah, sometimes you have to. I know that there are doctors for a reason. For some of us, but also, all doctors don't have the best, idea or the mindset to help you. So, most of them, many people, in different businesses, they want money. So
that is true.
You're going to keep it coming in. But then there are doctors who want to help, so I understand, having to do whatever you need to do for the time being. But I also believe in fasting and praying. So he said some things by fasting, some things, will be healed and removed from your life. So
yeah, I do know, and that's something that I need to, get more committed to, because I do feel like God was telling me, He wanted me to fast on a certain day of the week, just every week. Like, it needs to be a part of my routine, and I haven't been doing that. So that's something.
So when you gonna start?
I'm gonna start. I need to start next week.
Okay. What day are you gonna choose? Did you think about it already?
I think I had wrote Mondays. On Mondays, yeah. Okay. I'll do it for a little while, then I'll stop. And I'll do it for a little while, so I need to get back on it.
Yeah. It's hard. Especially when you got a lot of things going on and you don't even know what you're gonna do, especially all the things that you were just saying. Moving from here to there and trying to think. But I think once we do stay on the right path and do what God is asking us to do and being obedient, so many different things won't be happening.
Yeah, that's true.
So many things will be in order, I believe.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, it's tough because choosing fast days. I don't know. Even with me, sometimes some weeks I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do 3 days this week, and when those 3 days come, I'm like, oh my gosh, did I say I'm gonna do 3 days? But I still go ahead and do it. But it's the toughest thing to do. So you want to stick to it. Especially if you say you're gonna do it because it says to make a vow, you want to keep your vows. So even to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can do it. I'll be praying for you.
Thank you, girl.
Yeah. Oh man, it's hot out here. I'm outside.
It's windy. It's really breezy out here where I'm at. I'm sitting outside on the back porch.
Okay.
But I'm gonna get back in here. And finish working on my things.
Okay, well, stay focused.
I will, and I'll check back up with you next week.
All right.
Talk some more. I've talked all about me. I didn't even give you a chance to talk about you.
No, that's fine.
Okay, girl. Have a good rest of your week.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.